Well, those of you who have followed us know that we purchased a house, and although it was inspected by professionals multiple times, the sellers went to great lengths to cover up damage and mold and different things like that. Now, today we're going to focus on the deck and what we found when we disassembled the deck, and the importance of following code and the importance of designing correctly when you actually go about building things. So it's not a specific how-to on how to build a deck, but how to avoid problems. So let's get to it. One of the first things that attracted us to this house was the big, beautiful deck on back. And here you see it from the realtor photo with fresh paint and seemingly no damage whatsoever. Although I love the size of the deck, I was not a big fan of the railing. However, code requires a railing for decks above 30 inches. So that lower portion I actually split off and made a step down, got it below 30 inches so I could eliminate the railing altogether.
In the process of ripping out this deck, we are just now realizing the extent of the rot. Not just the deck itself, but just about any wood associated with it. So Dad's out of town for a few days. Everyone else is at work. And that means I get to stay home with little Kyla. Say hi.
Hi.
And the household projects. Right now we're working on ripping out the back deck, which is quite a chore in itself. But I figured ripping out a back deck and watching Kyla, how hard could it be? That was until she yelled at me from across the deck and said, "Sean, I got something stuck on my finger." Kyla, what did you get stuck on your finger? A zip tie.
A zip tie.
Day one, I'm failing. Don't move, okay?
Okay.
Almost there. Looky there. That'll do it.
As you're disassembling a deck, an essential tool is probably that 3-foot pry bar is what we use the most. I was unable to unscrew the boards because the screws were rusted out and the heads were cracking off, and also sometimes they would just strip out. So note to yourself, use stainless steel screws. It's extra money, but boy is it worth it. I want to show you some of the rot we found underneath this when we pulled off the top decking. It looks like the previous owner tried to sister boards to the end. What I mean by sister is what you see right here, okay? This board began to rot, so he basically put a good board onto it, and in the hopes that basically it would save that joist and not cause it to collapse. Now, I want you to look at some of these. There's ones that sistered. See how that original board just completely rotted away. In fact, the rest of the joist completely rotted away. So that little 18-inch sister board there did really nothing because the entire joist collapsed. Again, you see the same thing here. That entire joist rotted away and just basically turned to splinters, even though he tried to sister it right there. So realize that when you're trying to sister boards, it's really a temporary fix, maybe like a couple of weeks until you can get to it. But when the original rot starts, there's a reason for it, okay? You have to address that reason, whether it's water penetration, termites, or whatever. The sister board is not going to do anything except rot with the other board that just rotted. So again, deal with issues correctly and you won't have these problems. Here's the corner post here where I leaned on the railing and it just came apart. Most likely this was started by termites going up there. They eat along the grain, and then once they get those tunnels in there, water seeps in there and will completely rot the center out. So that's my corner post that just completely split right down the middle. Pretty bad shape. And other ones are in fine shape. So you really got to watch and inspect your deck to see any sign of termite damage
or rot and deal with it directly.
You may have seen a previous video where we showed how much the previous owner tried to hide when he sold the house. Well, this is another discovery we made right here. This concrete is relatively new. The post was brand new. It had the sticker still on it. And essentially, he put a concrete block there and poured concrete all over it, and then put the deck boards back on so you couldn't see it. The interesting thing is, I didn't even notice it this time, but it was not even attached to the deck. Later on, I was working, and it literally fell on top of me as I dug some of the dirt out. So, once again, buyer beware.
So I want to say something about a ledger strip or ribbon board. What that board is this guy right here. And in the old days, they used to cut the joists out and actually sit on that ribbon board there. And they don't recommend that anymore because moisture can collect up here and cause this to rot out, and then you lose some of your support. Of course, there's nails also coming through here, but you lose that support, and that's why they recommend joist hangers. However, I will say this, the old timers kind of swear by them, and I want to point something out. I had as much rot as I had in this deck. I have rot all over this deck. I have yet to find a strip of ribbon board that's actually rotted. In fact, if you look at this joist, this is a good example, and I found this a lot. The rot from these joists actually came from the top down, and this is where the decking sits there, and water gets between the decking and the joist, and it begins to rot from the top. In this board, you've got rot on the top, and you don't have any right there where the ribbon board is. So, the old timers might be right. Maybe that ribbon board is a good idea, but a lot of codes don't allow it anymore. So you might not have the option to do it anymore. A brief overview of this ecological disaster we have here attached to the house. Notice that there's wood going directly into the ground, through the joists, and basically up on the deck and directly to the house. That gives termites a path, basically. They can eat through a post, go up there, go along the joist, and get into the house, okay? So insurance companies now do not want you to have any continuous wood connection between the ground and the house. And let me show you what termite damage looks like here. So this post holding the steps, the termites eat along the grain. They come from the ground, they go right up there, they go right through that post, and putting a sleeve on it doesn't do anything but hide the termites, so that's not a good idea. It also traps moisture. And you see there, it's coming up from the ground through the post, and that's how they get into the deck. And another thing I want to point out is this concrete here has a crack in it, a big crack on the corner. Well, that corner is sloped down. You can see the deck. You see how that deck is twisted? That corner is dropping down. So if I want to redo this, first of all, I'm going to jack up that concrete a little bit, re-support it, and then those posts will not go through the concrete. I will actually have brackets on top of the concrete that will hold it, so I do not have any continuous path of wood from the ground up to the attachment to the house.
Well, the next step of the process is to get rid of the old deck, and I rented a dumpster. Quite costly. It not only cost to get the dumpster, but I loaded it with 5,200 pounds of decking material. And the way I did it was I rented the small dumpster, but I went ahead and stacked the wood in there so I could fit more. But 2.5 tons at the dump costs a lot of money. So when you budget for your deck, add about $1,000 to actually dispose of the old deck. So when you design your new deck and build it, don't repeat the problems of the past. In this deck, we have no wood touching the ground. You notice up top here where the ground is low, I don't have room for a footer and a beam. So I actually poured a 36-foot footer, and I actually used that as my upper beam. Now down lower, you see the 12-inch diameter tubes. You can get those at any local builder supply. And here it only requires a penetration of 12 inches, up north probably 36 inches. And last but not least, a concrete mixer. This was only $68 for the day, and it was worth its weight in gold. It can go through a lot of concrete in a short amount of time.
Okay, now I've got her dumping dirt. Come on, girl, let's dump it. Come on, empty it out. There you go. Yeah, it got out of the wheelbarrow. There we go. Now she's working. Now she's working.
And now she's resting. I guess that was enough work for the day.
So getting these anchor bolts in the concrete is a little bit tricky. These are 5/8 by 6.5 inch bolts, and they need to go all the way in the concrete. So essentially, I've set my tape here at about 8 inches, and the reason is because a dust collects down in the bottom of the hole as you drill it, and if this runs into that dust lump, then it won't go any further. So you got to make sure that hole is cleared out. So we're using kind of an ingenious method here. This is basically an old, well, it broke off of a table basically, but it's hollow. So basically you can blow into it. And so we stick that down the hole, blow into it, and it blows all that concrete dust right out of the hole. And then I'm able to use my screwdriver to measure and make sure that there's no dust in the bottom so that my bolt goes all the way in. So it's quite a process, but it works really well. Okay, so now we've got the bracket that we're going to put on the concrete here, and I want to make sure that it's lined up from one end to the other. So I've run a string here, but I've run that string 2 inches off from center because this is a 4-inch bracket. So essentially, if I take that bracket and I put it right up against that line, then I will get the center of the bracket right at the measurement that I want.
When that new decking arrives, it's going to be very heavy. This is over 4,000 pounds, and it's only the framing. So you want to make sure that it's placed in a position that is very easy to carry that lumber to where it needs to go, because these 36-foot long beams can be extremely heavy, and you don't want to have to carry that wood any more than you have to.
Well, we've got 2 beams in place. I kind of want to go through how we do these beams. First of all, they're 36 feet long, so that's about 450 pounds of treated lumber. So we do not build those and carry them over here. We actually build them in place. And the first step is we actually set this laser up and we make sure that our brackets are level across. Now, they're not going to be perfectly level. If they're within 1/4 inch, all I do is I shim the beam as I build it. If it's outside of 1/4 inch, a little bit more, which was over on that corner, we actually took this bracket off, shimmed it up, and that way the bracket fully grips the beam there. So again, we start with the laser, make sure those are good. Then we essentially build the beam in place 1 piece at a time. We'll come and clamp these boards together, make sure they're level, make sure they match up on the top, clamp them as tight as we possibly can, and then we shoot them with a nail gun. And so we start with 2-ply, then we do the 3rd ply, and essentially that's what we do. I want to point out one tool that is extremely useful in this application. When we talk about level, lasers can't be seen during the day, but this is a laser receiver, and you've seen another video on it. It's from Dovo. But we use this because we cannot see this laser out in the sunlight at all. But this thing picks it up, allows you to basically get right on the mark. I really love this thing. We've used it quite a bit. Let's get to work.
You can see us putting the clamps on here, and we want to tighten those down as much as possible before we shoot it with a nail gun, because we do not want any gaps between the plies. The friction of the wood on wood gives strength to the beam, and any gaps can weaken the beam. We do 2 plies all the way down first, and then go back and do the 3rd ply, because that beam gets really heavy and it's harder to shift around. We want to make sure it's in the right place before we put that 3rd ply on.
All right, we've built the entire beam. It's in now. I need to make sure it's level before I screw it to the brackets, okay? And the way I do that is I put up a laser right here, and I get a laser line. And I generally put it right below the top because it's probably going to undulate as I go up and down the beam. This one is 1/4 inch from the top. So what I've done is I've gone to both ends and I've marked a line 1/4 inch from the top. Now I'm going to go use this and see if that line is close to this, because I can't see the laser down there. It's daylight. Let's go take a look at the end. Okay, I've got the laser receiver. I can't see the laser, but it can see the laser. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here until it tells me it's lined up with it and see how it matches my mark. Okay, that's dead on right there, and it's about 1/8 inch from my mark. So I can throw a small shim in there, bring this end up, and I'll be dead on with the center. Let's go to the other end. I'll tell you what, doesn't get better than that. It's probably a 1/16 inch off. I'm not going to mess with that at all. I'm just going to screw it and leave it in place. A 1/16 of an inch over 16 feet, that's not too bad.
While my oldest son helped me with the beams, I had my younger kids actually cutting all the joists to 93 inches. I wanted them to be within a 1/16 of an inch. I was very particular because you really run into problems if you have joists that are not the same length. After that, we basically just assembled them in place, and you can see the blocking on the bottom. I haven't blocked the top section yet, but you also notice the tape. The tape keeps that moisture off the top of the joist, between the joist and the decking, so you don't get the rot from the top down that we noticed before. Well, shame on me for not following all the safety protocols. I actually shot a nail through a board, through my pinky finger, and into my ring finger, and had to go to the hospital, get a couple of stitches, get some antibiotics, and unfortunately, my wedding ring was not able to be removed, so it sat there, and it actually went numb the next day because that finger swelled up so bad. But safety first, people. Don't put your hand behind a nail gun. I ordered the second delivery right after the strapping and nailing inspection, which I passed on the first try. And this delivery, again, is a couple thousand pounds. We conveniently placed it right next to the deck. We also put the saw right there next to the bundle, and we're able to cut and carry right away. Worked at night sometimes because it was much cooler to do that. Every single joist requires 2 screws per board, and you can see here the taping on all the boards. We also used a bar with paint stirrers as our spacer between the boards to keep it all straight. And then we got a beautiful finished product in the end. We kind of had an unexpected addition to our deck motif in the back here. We were gifted a hot tub, and they asked if we had any place to put it, and I said, sure. I've got a little covering here, I've got lights and a fan, and it walks right onto the deck. So this is kind of nice. I've got it heated up now. It's 94 degrees. I'm going to take a shower, eat dinner, and hop in the hot tub tonight because I'm a little tired. Well, that's it. We're all finished up. The last step I had was doing the fascia board on the front and on the sides. Now, we are going to do the top deck. We'll be tearing that down, and there are holes in this deck right now, but it's only about 5 boards that it's cutting through, so we'll just replace those boards when it's time. The next step is to call the inspector, get it inspected, and then put some landscaping on the outside to have a nice transition from the deck to the backyard. Well, that's it for now. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, because we do not do very many videos anymore. So if you subscribe, you'll get an email when we do the next one, hopefully either the upper deck or the basement. We'll see you then.